Now, as gold attracts renewed investor interest, many South Africans holding Krugerrands may be sitting on a hidden tax problem. The issue is not only whether a sale triggers capital gains tax or income tax, but whether investors can prove what they paid, when they bought, why they bought, and what records support their position if SARS comes knocking. So let's discuss this in a little more detail. Tax Consulting South Africa, Thulisile Zwane joins me. Thulisile, good evening to you and a very warm welcome. Why are Krugerrands suddenly a tax risk for ordinary investors?
Thank you, Jeremy, for the welcome. Good evening to you and to the listeners. Like any other investments, SARS wants to tax the money, the gains that people make. So as this Krugerrands are now becoming very popular, SARS just wants their money. Therefore, it is important to be able to prove your purchases as well as your disposals.
So at what point then does a Krugerrand sale become a capital gains issue, and when then could SARS treat it as real income?
So what I will say that it depends on the intention. For a long-term investment, we now start to look at that as a capital gain. However, for a person maybe that's looking for just a short-term profit, SARS may deem to see this as revenue. So SARS will now want to tax what? The whole profits that you make from the revenue as you are buying and selling frequently. So it now becomes a trigger. Let's say that you have a long-term investment with Kruger coins and you now start selling them as they are viewed as an asset. It triggers capital gains.
How difficult then is it to prove intention?
It depends. Honestly, it depends. And also it is also important as you buy those Krugerrands that you make your intentions clear. Are you looking for a short-term profit? Or are you looking for a long-term store value or investment? So in that case, it makes it easier for everyone to know that if this is just for short-term profits, you know that you'll be frequently buying and selling, that we now look at your profits, not just the capital value. But however, if it is a long-term investment, we know that you're going to sell in the future. Now, this is a capital asset, not just trading for revenue.
Is the taxpayer's original intention really that important then, or do you think SARS is looking mainly at the profit?
I think they are mainly looking at the profit, and also it is imperative to understand what is your intention. Are you going to be selling and buying on a daily basis for a short-term profit, or are you looking into holding on to these investments longer?
What happens then if someone bought Krugerrand, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and Thulisile simply no longer has the paperwork? What kind of trouble could they find themselves in?
The challenges that they're going to find themselves in is that chances are when we now need to declare this on your tax return, when you trigger capital gains, we need to calculate your base cost. So if you don't have any records of your base cost, it now becomes a challenge for us to declare this on your tax return, because should SARS come back to select your return for verification, how are we then going to prove that you really did buy this Krugerrand at maybe 10 Rand, for an example? So it becomes very crucial, because you may find yourself at a worse off position, because now in this case, we will only take into account your proceeds, of which we now have the proof of income of your proceeds. So you are now taxed at a higher rate than you would have if you have proof of your base cost.
So what specific documents then should every Krugerrand holder be keeping right now in order to avoid that kind of difficulty?
Just your purchase invoice, your bank statements reflecting the payments, your investment platform records, your correspondence relating to the transactions. This is what would advise taxpayers to keep. Just ensure that as you buy, you do keep those purchase invoice, proof of payments safely somewhere for just in the future. And in case maybe you have bought these 10 years ago and you are now starting to think that maybe you want to sell in the next coming future, I would advise start gathering those supporting documents now.
And that could be difficult. So what should someone do then if they know their records are either incomplete or lost?
In this case, just go to the financial institution that you bought those Krugerrands for. I believe they might be able to assist you.
And what about family gifts or inherited coins or even private purchases, Thulisile? Are they particularly vulnerable to dispute, do you think?
Yeah, of course they are, because with SARS, like any other taxpayer, what you declare on your tax return, you must be able to provide supporting documents for. You must be able to prove to SARS that this is how I acquired such a thing, such an investment or such income.
And just a final question then, is it your contention then that SARS is becoming quite assertive, aggressive in asking for proof around physical assets like coins?
Yes, definitely, most definitely, especially now that it is becoming a very popular investment.
Thank you very much indeed, Thulisile Zwane, tax consultant at Tax Consulting South Africa. Appreciate your time.